Want to welcome everybody who is joining this week's chat. I have Jaimy Ellis and Josh Hanna, and over this next hour or so, we're going to pick their brains and just talk all kinds of things product oriented. Both of these people are amazing, fantastic, wonderful, stupendous, I don't know what other adjectives to use, photographers. And I'm lucky enough to call both of them friends. I've known Jaimy for quite a while. We're both here in Iowa. And Josh, I've gotten to know over the last couple of years through working here at McKenna. And Josh is one of the most humble photographers I've ever met, and talented as well. So excited to have both of you guys here, and just to pick your brains about products and business and whatnot. So thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate the invitation. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So Josh, I'll just start with you because you happen to be up on the screen at the moment. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your business?
Sure. So of course, I think like a lot of people, your business kind of transforms over the years as you transform. I still call myself a high school senior photographer, but that, over the years that's changed to focus on primarily just high school senior guys. And photography sadly isn't even the majority of my income anymore, because I do focus a lot on the sports templates and things like that. I do some work with other people, do some educational events and all those kind of things. So I think most creatives who are business owners can relate to the whole ADD thing, where it's really hard to focus on one thing for too long. So I find that splitting my business up allows me to focus here a little bit, focus there a little bit. But I always find that when I get back to the photography side of things, that's where more of the passion comes out. So I still very much at my core consider myself a photographer, and particularly high school senior guys. I love working with guys. I understand their brains a lot better than a lot of the high school girls' brains. And so we just mesh really well. And so, yeah.
Good. How long have you been taking photos?
Well, digital wasn't a thing when I started.
Okay.
So showing my age there a little bit,
Same.
back in the day when it was too expensive to, develop the film. Like the learning curve was so steep back then, because I couldn't afford back in that day to develop all the film and buy the rolls of film. And then, I would send out a roll and 2 pictures would come back even exposed decently whatsoever, because I didn't understand exposure or anything. But I remember when Kodak had come out with, this new digital camera that I spent way too much money on back in the day, and had this little bitty, I forget what it was, 2-inch or 2.5-inch screen. Resolution was horrible. But what I realized was that instant feedback of oh man, I can take this, I can see in real time. And so I learned right away, perspective was something that really drew my attention. Because interestingly enough, I swore that I would never photograph people. So I only was photographing flowers and trees and landscapes and things like that. But I found myself getting down in the grass and photographing dandelions from the bottom up, and all these views I've never seen in real life. And then I would look at the camera and go, oh, wow, this is really neat. Now I find myself doing that with people as well,
Sure.
and these different angles. And so, yeah, photography in general has been, gosh, I graduated in 95, probably a year later, I got my first camera.
Okay.
But, then as a business, around 2007, I think, is when I first started to charge people.
Okay.
By 2010, I had officially started the business. By 2012, I left my banking job to do it full time.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. Jaimy, how about you? Tell us a little bit about you and your photography business.
Yeah, so I am Iowa native, born and raised for many generations before me also. And I actually have a brick and mortar studio in Iowa City right now. But if we go back, I got into photography through 4-H. So if anybody else from the Midwest or anywhere, but it's kind of big in the Midwest. I grew up on a hog farm, but they were not our livestock. So like we took care of them, but we were paid to do that. So I couldn't show any livestock really, rabbits. But anyway, so and I've always been very artsy. So I immediately gravitated towards photography, visual arts, that kinds of projects for 4-H. And my dad had an fully manual 35mm Pentax camera that was old. Like, you know, he used it when he was young and he taught me how to use it. And so I did all of my photography projects for 4-H using that camera.
Okay.
And I just loved it. And so then when I got into high school, I still used that I used that camera till I got my first Canon. It's a film camera. It's like the one Elon 7, EOS Elon 7. Anyway, I used that for a long time and I photographed my friends a lot. So right away I knew that I really enjoyed photographing people like me, which at the time would have been like senior age people. I worked for a photographer in my hometown for a little bit. She introduced me to Hawkeye Community College and PP, Iowa. And so I went to school for photography at Hawkeye and graduated in 2006 and immediately started a business right after that. So the whole time I was kind of charging on the side for photography. And then I went to school for photography and started a legit business. That business took off really hot and heavy immediately, a full service, everything under the sun that you could think of. We pretty much never said no to anything. And then I had a business partner at the time and she had some life changes and we had to make some decisions and decided to close the doors of that studio. At the time I was very burnt out and very overworked and wanting to get married and buy a house and have kids. So I took a tiny bit of a hiatus to do those things and then started my current business in 2014. So 10 years now I've been doing this. I started on location, everything. And when I started this business, it was only high school seniors that I marketed. So I did other things here and there, but I really only focused on seniors. And then I got a brick and mortar studio location 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago,
Okay.
and added a headshot line in with that. So my headshot line kind of pays for my rent. And then I use my studio as a showroom and a sales room for my seniors, which are mostly on location. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, you've got a great studio. I've been in your studio and you've got
Thanks.
a cool location. Just a really kind of historic building there that you're in.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Yeah.
it's small, but it's mighty.
Yeah, exactly. And it works for what you need it to. So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
awesome. Well, awesome. Thank you guys. Let's get started with some of the questions. So I'll throw out some questions and both of you just feel free to answer. You don't have to go in any specific order. We could paper, rock, scissors, whatever you guys want to do to fight it out. But I know everybody is just really excited to learn from you guys. So first question I'm going to throw out there to you both is, what are some of your favorite McKenna products?
Well,
Jaimy, I'll let you go first.
okay, cool. So my favorite personally are the metal prints. I love them a lot. I try to sell them to my heart's content, but for some reason, my clients want books and albums, and I don't know what it is, if it's just the scene here in Iowa City, but wall art is not a big priority for a lot of my clients. Unfortunately, I'm trying to change that. But I think the metals are my favorite product that you guys have in your line. I love the super glossy, so I almost never order anything but glossy. And then my favorite are the framed versions. So I tend to lean towards the framed. I think it looks a little bit more finished, but they're all awesome. I honestly believe that I have not seen a metal printed anywhere else that looks close to what you guys do. So that's my personal favorite.
So when you say framed, you're referring to the float frame,
Yeah.
the black, the white, or the maple float frame.
Yep.
Awesome. Good, thank
Yeah,
you.
metals for me too. Metals are you know, and I guess there's a little bit of a difference between my favorite and my customer's favorite. Like Jaimy was saying, my favorite is any metal in the matte finish. The color saturation on the matte finish, and you know, it reduces that glare. Most houses are very like glare prone. So I know if I'm printing for myself in my own home, yeah, I love to print the matte finish for myself. Now, my customers, I usually end up going with a semi-gloss. Um, the glossy is amazing. Okay, like it's weird for me. The glossy is such an amazing print if it's lit well, right? But so I usually, for my customers, I usually talk them into the semi-gloss because it's like that kind of best of both worlds, in my opinion.
Okay.
They can hang it just about anywhere, and it's going to look really good. But occasionally, I will talk them into a matte. I do show them a sample matte print one that I have, you know, when we do our IPS. But I also love the Integrity albums. My favorite part of the Integrity album, and I do the metal cover. So again, metal. My favorite part's when I stick those into a client's hands and they're like, whoa, okay, this is serious. This is not the album they knew of, you know, growing up or anything else they've seen. It's like robust and heavy and feels expensive, feels luxury. And, you know, you do that black leather wrap, you know, I do the black synthetic leather wrap with the metal cover. And they feel how thick the pages are. So my favorite customer response item is the Integrity album. My favorite personal print is the matte metal.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the sample that I have here of yours is on the semi-gloss. So
yeah,
yeah,
the semi-gloss is great. That's typically what I steer them to, and they always look amazing.
yeah. And then Josh, you also do quite a few image boxes, right?
I do. So, and you know, the way that I approach using my products is I changed a number of years ago, based on conversations I'd had with other photographers. And for instance, when it gets to the image boxes, one of the best pieces of advice I got years ago from another photographer said, make sure there's an option where they can get everything. Because inevitably, and this happens, you know, like I was getting all this wisdom in, and I've seen it played out over the years. At some point, inevitably during that sell session, somebody's going to make a comment similar to, I wish I could just have it all, you know? And so if we don't have that option to give them all, we've just missed a sales opportunity. And so I don't consider myself a salesman whatsoever. I really dislike sales, but I'm a problem solver. So when I let them create the problem, and I just want to have a solution. So when they say, I want everything, that's where I use my proof boxes. So I'll have a sample image box, and it's got all of the proofs. So everything they've been culling down and trying to get rid of, and they say, well, I just want it all. I'm like, listen, you can have it all right here. This box has all of these images in it, and I can actually give this to you for free. And I use that to incentivize now my sales. So once they reach a certain dollar amount, I'm like, I want to show you this, but we're not even going to talk about this proof box right now because you're probably going to take it home free. And so then that allows me to get into conversations about, you know, selling the wall art and the albums, things like that. So yeah, I love the image boxes because they're such a great sales tool to, if you incentivize your sales to get those higher numbers.
Now, Josh, do you
And
typically?
they're also great. Just a side note on those proof boxes is, there's always space in there. And I purposely, because I usually put it between 100 and 125 proofs in one. And so there's usually space in there where I'm like, you can store senior memorabilia in this, you know, your prom tickets. Usually there's room for a tassel, a keychain, like these little memorabilia things. So now it becomes this little keepsake box. That's not just their image, but it's things from senior year as well.
Yeah. And do you typically offer the 5x7 or 4x6 size or 8x10?
Well, I'll sell them anything, but for my incentive, I offer the 4x6 is what they would get free, full of the proofs. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a 4x6 proof box, as Josh calls it, with prints inside. And yeah, I think it's a great product to offer to your clients. And like you mentioned, if you call this, you know, like a memory box or keepsake box or whatever, you know, yes, they could keep their tassel in here from graduating. They could keep their tickets from the senior trip. You know, this is small enough that it could go to college with them and kind of remember their high school, you know, days. So yeah.
It's not uncommon for clients, you know, if I talk to a mom, maybe I've photographed a sibling later, or I see them just out in the street or something. It's not uncommon that I hear, I just pulled that proof box out the other day and flipped through everything again. Like that is a product they go back to. It's not something that just sits on a shelf unused.
Yeah, good.
And I really think that you know, in this digital age, we've talked about this through the years, but especially in this digital age, like people miss that tactile experience of being able to flip through photos.
Yeah.
I know my wife just had photo albums out like last week, flipping through a bunch of stuff, and she was handing me stuff when we were looking. That experience is just, it doesn't compare with like trying to flip through a phone and look for images, you
Sure.
know. So
Now, Josh, we got a question for you from one of the guests. They ask, how much processing are you doing on those proofs?
yeah, that's a great question. You know, I never want to do too much work unless they're willing to compensate. So that proof is literally just a proof. It's images out of camera that are then getting a very fast Lightroom pass just to fix, you know, exposure and color balance and stuff. That's a very, very fast.
Okay.
And that's all there is to it. And they know that, you know, so when they're doing the viewing, I tell them, hey, these are the images out of camera. And I do believe in developing our skills to where we're comfortable selling our images out of camera. You know, we should be able to do that, but I know for some people they're still not comfortable with that. And
Sure.
I remember being that person. Um, but yeah, mom loves them on the screen as she's seeing them. So yeah, I'm like, hey, everything that you've already cut out, you're still going to get that in the proof box. So everything you're seeing, and then any of your final printed products, your wall arts, your albums, you know, things like that, those are going to be those fully retouched and color graded images. Good question.
Makes sense.
Do you mind sharing what the customer has to reach to get that item for free?
The 4x6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's around $2,000 ish. It's on my website. I change those numbers like every 6 months, so I don't memorize them. So I always tweak them just a little bit. But yeah, it's on my website for anybody to see. Um, my goal is to sell a one piece of wall art, which is typically, again, I work with guys. So the first thing they do when they come in is I stick a big 24x36 metal in their hands, and they go, "Oh, this is really metal. This is awesome." You know, once a guy says this is awesome, mom's buying it. Let's be real. Um, so if I sell them one wall art and one album, they've already reached that tier to get that for free. So that's why I always hold that off until after I make those first two sales. Because then I'm like, hey, you've already got this for free. What else do you need? You know, so I'm trying to, I try to use my incentivization products as the things they want the most. For instance, one of the other incentive items that I really love from McKenna is the curved metal, the 12x18 curved metal. The senior guys love that piece. Yes, they love that. Um, and so when I put that in their hand and I show them how it's freestanding, they're like, "This is really cool." I'm like, hey, if you end up spending here, this is a free product for you. So I'm trying to hype up, and it's the products that they really love, the things that they're going to get for free by just going ahead and buying all the other things that they know they're going to need as well.
And Josh,
The
do
same
you
with like,
like the concave or convex?
I like the convex because it presents more strongly, right?
Yeah.
So,
So this
and I
style.
remember having, yeah, I remember having a conversation about this a couple of years ago, maybe with Jared. Um, it, you know, the concave recedes, so it's a
Hmm.
little softer. You know, maybe if it was a senior girl in the right situation, that concave would make a little bit more sense to be a little bit softer. But I'm working with a lot of guys who want to like present, right? So that outward expression, I think, is just much stronger. So yeah, I show and I sell the convex one.
Awesome. And Jaimy, you also offer image boxes or proof boxes, right?
I used to,
Used
but
to. Okay.
yeah, so I actually took that off my price list because the main reason was because I would always get pissed when somebody ordered one because I didn't want to design the cover. And I like design work, but it just like doesn't fit into my workflow very well. So every time somebody would order one, I'd be like, damn, I don't want to do that. So I took it off, but I like the idea of doing it incentivized to get them all printed at that cost. That's a great idea. So I'm taking notes.
Well, I have a solution. You can send the covers to Josh and he'll design it for you, and then you can offer them. So,
Or I just make like a basic something that I just drop their photo on and call
sure,
it good. But
sure.
yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, great. So the question I asked is, what are some of your favorite McKenna products? Now, a follow-up question would be, do you find that those are the same products that your customers really like?
Well, I will say it might be my own fault, but no. My highest selling product is definitely an 8x8 hinged press book.
Okay.
Um, and that's because of how I have my packages built out. My two highest collections include everything on a USB. So they're getting all the digitals with the everything collection. And the two highest collections, the highest one is an album included with that. And then the next one down is a book included with that. So it's like really the only difference is album versus book. I sell a lot of the books. And for me, it's great because that collection I think is about, I think it's $24.50 or $23.50 is what they have to pay for it. But my cost out of pocket, or my cost of goods for that collection is around $250. They get a book, they get a little 3-inch, the wood, it looks like a wallet box, but I put my USB in
The
that.
jump drive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I get my jump drive for you guys, the little wooden box that has their image on the cover, the book, the hinged press book, and then I do a mobile app and a grad card design. So that collection is by far my most popular collection. Like almost everybody does that. So I print a lot of the 8x8 press books.
Okay.
But it's really easy to upsell to an album too. Like if somebody really likes the album, there is a really big difference in the quality. And so they both are great products, but you can tell an obvious upgrade, right? And so it's kind of easy for me to just jump them up to that bigger collection if they're kind of on the fence, and do an album instead. So I would say my two most popular items, aside from the digitals, is the 8x8 hinged press book and the Integrity album.
Okay. Thanks. So same question to you, Josh. Do you find that your customers, favorite products line up with your favorite products, or do they order something different?
Well, so for me, they kind of have to,
Okay.
because what I started doing a number of years ago is a very curated offering of products. It's where I only offer a very narrow subset of what's available based on what I feel works with my style the best, what presents the best on the
Sure.
images that I'm putting on it. And so I'm not even presenting them options to buy things outside of that. And I'll make a side note with them that, hey, if you've seen it before, I can get it. Right. So they know, like, I can provide completely full service. But I tell them, hey, this is what most customers like because it presents the best for my work. And once you say the phrase most customers, well, we know, sales mentality, people want to be average. They want to do what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And so I've never had, since I started doing that small curated selection of products, nobody's ever came to me and said, well, can you get this or can you make this? They're just completely happy with those handful of products that I'm offering.
Okay. Awesome.
I would say I'm the same way. I have a really small list of items, all from McKenna, that I think fit my brand really well. And so I'm not really disappointed when anybody orders anything, because I'm like, oh, I know it's going to look great and it matches my imagery and my brand. Kind of why I took that image box off of there, because it didn't really jive with what I wanted to do. So yeah, I would say that I have curated a price list similar to Josh that I know is going to be great no matter what. And the items are all going to look awesome. So
Yeah. 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 A
I
couple
would say
comments oh, go ahead.
the one product that I would love to sell more of is the metal print with the standout post mount with the metal stand. I love that so much, but because I haven't had much success of like trying to sell installation for people. You know, I know a lot of photographers once saw the prints in the customers' homes. I actually wouldn't mind getting into that, but that's such a hard mount for the average consumer to put up. So I never sell that, but that's probably my all-time favorite way to display the
Okay.
metal because it's just more metal. So
I really like these.
yeah.
I don't sell a ton of them, but I have a few. I've sold a few. And these are really, used to have an acrylic block from somewhere else that I took off my price list and replaced with these. And I love these. So anyway, I don't know if
Yeah.
I think it's 8x12 and 5x7.
Yeah, we've got a couple different sizes available, you know, panoramic, vertical, horizontal. So yeah, that's a fun option, kind of a spin off of what Josh was mentioning. So
Mhm.
yeah, so we got a couple questions that have come in the chat. One, not necessarily a question, more of a comment. They said, I find giving people too many choices confuses the whole process. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then one of the questions was, how is sales impacted by showing clients images using video presentations versus the physical product?
Hmm.
I don't know if either of you do video like Zooms or conference calls or anything like that, but
I have an interesting take on this because for many years my business was all on location. So I only sold either, well, when the pandy hit was all virtual. But before that, I was going into people's homes and doing like a consultation ahead of time to help them style and everything. And I had a giant bag of products that I carried with me everywhere.
okay.
And so I would just show them the products in their home or wherever you're, in person. Um, I do think it makes a huge difference for people to see things in person. I think back then is when I became really good at selling albums and books because they're
Okay.
easy to show and carry. Wall art is not easy to, carry around. And I want to sell really big wall art. So like I just can't carry that with me everywhere, or I couldn't. But I do think it makes a big difference as far as like being able to sell different things and upsell, like I was mentioning,
Mm-hmm.
upselling from the book to the album when they can hold it and see it. I think that makes a big difference for sure.
Yeah, I think there's two main areas that I look at. One is you can't underestimate the power of placing that product in somebody's hands physically. Again, like I
Absolutely.
said, the first thing I do is when the senior guy sits down is I put that big metal right in their hands when they feel it. And there's always that comment like, oh, this is really metal. Like you weren't kidding. Like, yeah, it's printed on a sheet of metal. How awesome is that? Um, or we're putting that album, in mom's hands or whoever's, and they feel the weight of it and the how thick and how luxury it feels. Um, and the other side is that when you're selling wall art, it's really hard to present via Zoom or via video, remotely or whatever, sizing. We all know that
Oh,
if you
sure.
say the phrase 30 by 40, people are like, oh no, that's way too huge. Unless they're in
Mm-hmm.
person and you show that print on a wall, a regular wall, we're like, oh wow, that actually looks pretty normal,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's that old school of thought of like you want to show a size bigger than you want to sell kind of thing. Um, and so it makes it a no-brainer to sell 24 by 36 because they're like, oh, that looks normal there. Well, maybe that's not the space in my house. Let's just do the next one down.
Yeah.
And so I think I agree. I think it makes a huge impact of being able to show physically in person those prints.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thanks for answering that. Question came in. Jaimy, can you grab your post print behind you again? So someone just wanted the name of that. So that is a standard metal option. So you would order your standard metal, and then off to the right-hand side under options, you would select the metal post easel. And then that just puts those little posts at the bottom there. Thank you, Jaimy.
It's a really easy sell for like offices, mantles. It looks, I told them a mom the other day, I'm like, if your home is really contemporary or modern in design, like you want to go with this because they're not putting a frame, like those kinds of people just don't put frames from Walmart in their
Mhm.
home. They just don't do it. So anyway, it's a pretty easy sell so far, but
Yeah,
it's kind of new on my list right now. So we'll
perfect.
see.
Thank you. So there was a follow-up question to the question about, physical product or doing it, over video. The follow-up question is, do you actually invest in an image, if I'm understanding the question correctly, with their images on it and pray that they buy it? Or do you just have a sample that they could visualize, it's some other kid, it's a wedding, it's a baby, it's a senior, whatever it may be, but they could at least feel it and touch it and understand this is what theirs would look like. What would you guys say?
So for me, I just use sample images.
Mm-hmm.
Now, along that school of thought, there is something that over the past 4 to 5 years, 4 years or so, that I have noticed and that I have started to approach more, particularly with the albums, or anything that you want to sell. So I find that if you have a sample album that has a senior on it, that your customer coming in for the IPS, if they know that customer, you've just sold that product.
Oh, good
So
to
for
know.
instance, with senior guys, um, so I'm starting to experiment with doing albums that has features a senior from, like, a few of the different high schools that I work with. So if I know that they're at that high school, that's the album I'm going to present to them, because inevitably the guy's like, oh, that's Will.
Huh.
I know him. As soon as he says I know him, what happens in mom's head? She's like, well, if it was good enough for Will, it's good enough for my kid. And so, like, again, I'm not a salesman, I'm more of a problem solver. Like, that's already created that issue with them, that, like, if it was good enough for him, it's good enough for my kid. In other words, they see him, they recognize him, they're buying that product. And I have found that's been 100% the case thus far in testing that, kind of experimenting with that school of thought.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I also have another little idea as well. Many years ago, so when I was in my very first business, I used to do a thing called a art print. We just called it that. And this was before like in-person sales. Well, maybe not. I can't remember, but we used to do little proof books, and then we'd have a sales session with
Mm-hmm.
them. And we would do the sales session on the same day that they're seeing their proof book. So pretty much just like in-person sales we do now on a screen or projected, but with a proof book. Anyway, I would have printed a image of them in an unusual size. So like 10 by 30 or a square or some unusual, not easy to frame size. And it would be like artist choice from the session, my favorite photo from their session. I would have it printed ahead of time and it would be on an easel covered up. And so we'd show them their proof book or do their slideshow or whatever. And then I would be like, okay, well, there's one image you haven't seen yet that's not in any of that stuff. And it's my personal favorite. I've chosen to print it for you. And then I like would unveil this art print. And then if they wanted to take it home that day, it was discounted. So,
Oh, okay.
really good discount. You could incentivize as well, but they could take this print home. And usually they were like medium sized items, not like a large print. So it wasn't a huge cost for me, but anyway, it was a huge hit. I think maybe in like 6 or 7 years doing that for many, 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 many seniors, we didn't sell maybe like a handful.
Okay.
So they almost always took it home. If they purchased it, then it was part of the images that they could order from. If they didn't purchase it, it wasn't. So if we're assuming they don't like that image, if they don't want to purchase the wall art, so then it's not part of their gallery or their proofs. So anyway, that was many years ago, and I have been toying with the idea of starting that over again because I want to sell more art, more wall art. And so I think next year I'm going to reintroduce that and have a printed piece of that person ready for them when they come for their in-person sales appointment, to kind of hopefully get people interested in wall art again.
Yeah. And was that just a luster mounted print or what did you use?
Yeah, it was I think we mounted them on Centra.
Okay.
or something along those lines.
Irene. Yeah.
Styrene,
Yeah.
yes. And then, yeah, they were just like luster mounted print, and we'd have them on an easel. But
Okay.
I'm considering doing like a curved, like that 12 by 18 curved metal that you showed, something like that. Or like a medium sized, small to medium sized metal print. Something along those lines that I could unveil and offer them at a discount at their
Sure.
order appointment.
Sure. Awesome. So hopefully that answers the question that was chatted in. Please keep sending in the questions. These have been awesome. So another question for you two. Would you please rate the most important thing to your business regarding product? So would you say, is it price, quality, turnaround time, or just like a unique product?
Most important. Quality is always the more I do this, the more quality is a factor.
Okay.
Because in my own work, that's one of my things that I'm trying to present to people. Is like it's about creating something that's of quality that you just can't get anywhere else. So I need
Sure.
my products to match that. So quality is huge, which is again one of the reasons that I use McKenna to print everything, because I know all the quality is always going to be there. And I will say having different products, even though that we know there's a lot of knockoff products around all kinds of labs and everything, it's still surprising how little known metal prints are. For instance, there's so many customers that I work with who's like, I've never seen this on a metal, whereas to us it's commonplace. So it's that combination of quality, and again, it feels different to my customers anyways, even though it's been around for quite some time now.
Sure.
So to me, it's kind of a combination between those two.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with everything Josh just said. I think it's a combination for me personally. The quality is a huge thing because we are a luxury field of work. Like, people don't get photos unless they can afford it or, have the money to put towards it. So the products and items need to feel luxurious as well. I think that having the variety of product lines so that I can choose something that fits for my brand, and that there's options for me to curate a price list or a collection of items that fits with my brand using one lab. For a little while in years past, I was using a couple different labs because I liked one product from this and they kind of all meshed together, but I couldn't really find something, a collection of things at one lab that I thought was like great until I moved to McKenna. So for me, if the quality is great, but it's super, super expensive, or their customer service is just horrible, I don't know. I would probably reconsider ordering from a company if I wasn't really happy with everything else included. So I feel like for me, with McKenna especially, it's just been like icing on the cake to have really awesome products topped off with like really comparable pricing and amazing customer service.
Perfect.
And if
Thank
I
you.
can add a side note to that, it's not only the quality of the products, but it's working with a company who backs up their quality. And what I mean by that is I've only ever had to replace one print ever, as far as like the print itself broke down. And that was this been several years ago, but McKenna had started printing. It was the float, the metal float that has the three metals on the float, the background. They had just started making that product, and I was like, this is pretty cool. I'm going to try and sell some of these. And so I'd sold one, and like 2 years later, the customer messaged me back, like a year and a half, and they're like, hey, the background's peeling off of this print. Which again, let's be realistic. It's a new product. Things go through revisions and changes and all this kind of stuff. But the thing that stood out to me was a year and a half later when I reached out to McKenna and said, "Hey, I had this customer. They bought this print, and the background's starting to peel." There was no like figuring anything out. It was just a simple send us the image again, and we'll ship it right back out to them. Like it was just, so working with a company who not only has quality, and since then, I've never seen that issue again, right? Because again, new product, they learn, they develop, they grow. But working with a company who so not only takes that quality important to them, but then backs up that quality, because that allows me now as a service provider to say, I can also guarantee the quality of this product I'm selling you, because my customer isn't buying a print from McKenna, they're buying a print from me.
Sure.
And so for me to be able to now back up that quality and say, I can guarantee this print will last is huge to me.
Yeah, good. Thank you for those comments. So I'm going to take a little bit of a right direction and now talk a little bit about the sales process. So do both of you do IPS or do you do online sales or both?
I'm all IPS. I don't offer an online gallery option unless it's like last ditch effort for some reason or other. So yeah, I'm doing all in-person sales.
Okay.
Yeah, same for me.
Okay. And so do you offer at any point online sales or just IPS?
Kind of depends on what you mean, but like for example, if a customer comes in and they finalize their order with me, but like maybe they have like a grouping of a few 8x10s or whatever it is that they want somebody else to choose, then I give them options to be able to view their images um so that somebody else can pick a photo. But that's kind of rare.
Okay.
I usually I don't have to deal with that a whole lot because I just convince them to choose for that person.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of the only reason,
Okay.
really.
Yeah, same. I went through the revisions years ago trying to do, a follow-up gallery for if they want to share with grandparents or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But I found it was never really getting used. It was such a rare occasion that I was like, why is this just an extra piece of the puzzle in my workflow that I don't need? And so I removed it. And
Okay.
yes, I find there's very few people that come back to follow up on an order. Every now and then somebody will be like, hey, I decided I want to get this, but that's such a rare
Sure.
occasion.
Yep.
Sure.
Same here.
So both of you do IPS. For somebody new that may be on this, if you're not sure what IPS stands for, in-person sales, but what tools do you guys use to do that as you're presenting to customers?
I'm pretty simple. I use Bridge.
Okay.
Yep. So I just am color coding. Like they come in, I show them a slideshow through Bridge. Like I just hit view slideshow and I have music playing just in the studio. And then we watch a slideshow and then we go into their images and I tab through each image and I just am hitting 6, 7, or 8 and color coding. I ask them to tell me yes, no, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I color code their images. And then, that kind of works really well for me. I used Pro Select in the past, but at this point in time, I don't feel like Pro Select can do much anything different than I do through Bridge. I do use Fundy to show wall groupings and stuff like that, like in a living room setting
Okay.
and sizing if they need it. But even that is not I don't do that a whole lot. But yeah, I just use Bridge for mine.
Perfect.
I've used Lightroom before to do really similar. Honestly, most of the time, I have my website is through PhotoBiz,
Okay.
and I just use a PhotoBiz gallery because you can do the little heart favorite on
Yeah.
there. And so when we're doing the whole yes, no, maybe, if it's a yes or a maybe, it gets the heart on it, and then we just keep sorting down from there. And then I actually just build my order right there through their system. So I've got all my products and pricing in there and I just add it right in. And when we're done, they hand me a credit card and I finish the checkout right on the website page. So
Yeah.
that's just the simplest way that I've found to do it because my brain needs simple. I don't do well with complex.
Yeah. I love that because I think as we continue doing this series, there's no right or wrong way here. Everybody is going to gravitate towards what works best for them,
Mhm.
whether it's Bridge, which is free, with your Creative Cloud subscription, it's your website, it's Fundy, it's Lightroom, Pro Select. I mean, there's so many different pieces of software out there that you could do this. But the point is you're presenting images to them and helping them, educate them, leading them to pick out their favorites and pick the products then.
I will say the only other piece that I use during a session is Photoshop,
Okay.
and that's just because I do my best to refuse to sell cropped prints. So if it's not a 2:3 ratio, I try to avoid it at all costs.
Same.
Unless it's the 12 by 12 album, I'll do the square there.
Okay.
Um, and then they always, of course, their default is like, can I see this in an 8 by 10? I'm like, well, here's why you don't want this, and I'll show them how it crops the feet off or crops the hands off or
Sure.
Mhm.
something.
Sure.
That's the only other piece I use for that particular reason.
That's great. So it sounds like both of you are doing your own sales, correct? So
Yes.
Correct.
neither of you have staff members doing this for you. So
Nope.
what would be the biggest hurdle for you when you switched to doing in-person sales? Like what was the hardest thing to overcome?
Um,
Feeling like a horrible imposter, and that
yeah.
I was charging people for something that was worth way more than it should be, and not devaluing myself, and all of those.
Hmm.
As far as the hardest part, that's the whole internal emotional struggle with switching to in-person sales.
Yeah,
You can
For
kind of
sure.
detach with online sales, and you can sit back and go, oh, if they like it, they'll get it. You're not in their face, so it's learning to overcome that uncomfortableness, and how to manage that.
sure.
Yeah. Man, I started in-person sales a really long time ago. Like I think
Okay.
it was when Pro Select very first came out. So with my first business, we did in-person sales like when it was kind of new in the photography world.
Okay.
Or coming a little bit more mainstream. And just educating people about the process, I think for me was what helped. So I was the only person doing that in my area for a long time. But once people who either came to me or knew about me knew about the process, it just became like normal. So I think getting over that, like kind of getting people used to that process, which for now a lot of photographers do it. So people are not, the general public is not like, what is this anymore as much. But for me, I think that was the biggest hurdle, was to like just really educate people. And I think now I really do that ahead of time in my um, contact with the client, all through booking and the whole process. So they know when they come back, they're expected to order. And yeah, I mean, I think everybody always has objections and stuff to overcome, but yeah, just kind of getting used to rejection and trying to go until you can get that rejection is hard to overcome as well.
Hmm. Good. So Josh, you kind of alluded to this earlier when you mentioned you try to print an album that has a senior boy from the same, district or school or whatever that your current one is at. But what kind of like cues would you watch for during the sales process where you're like, I can kind of tell they're leaning towards this, so you can kind of steer that sales?
So I don't consider myself a salesperson, but a problem solver. So I'm always listening
Sure.
for a problem, and that problem can be, again, I want everything. That's a problem that they're trying to overcome, and then offering that solution in the proof box. Um, or the way that I present my albums is when we're culling the images down, and usually we get usually around 40 to 45 images. People start to struggle, like they're in love with the ones that are left, and they're like, well, I don't know how I use 40 images. Well, that's when I'll present the album. This is how we use 40 images. So I'm always looking for that cue where, excuse me, where they're saying something that makes me go, okay, how do I overcome that issue that they've just made in their own head? And then Another great piece of advice that I heard years ago, I don't even remember from where, was, excuse me again, learn when to shut up. So I've found with senior guys in particular, it's the sweetest and most frustrating thing. They'll they'll start building their order together, periodically they're like, okay, where we're at, once they start getting over that $2,000 mark, you can start to feel a little bit of reservation, right? They know they still want some things, they're trying to calculate stuff in their head. And when it comes to that, like, usually what happens for me is the wall art piece, that metal piece. The first thing that I hand the senior guy, which I've learned, get them to handle it, talk about how awesome it is. They're always like, well, you wanted a medal, right? And they're talking to the kid, and he's always, the kid's never seen the pricing. The parents get all the pricing beforehand, and when he sees, a 750 or 1,050 price tag on a medal, based on the size, he's always like, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'm good. I'm good with what we got. And it starts this dynamic between mom and son where I used to try and like chime in and try and help. Well, what if we did this? And I always just talked myself down every time I started to buddy and get involved. And so I learned that when they start this whole conversation where he's like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, dude, just shut up. In my head, I'm like, please be quiet. It's so sweet of you, but shut up. I learned to just sit back, and it gets real uncomfortable for like 3 minutes because they're just kind of it's like they're trying to like communicate telepathically of like, it's a lot of money, but and it always comes back to, if I just sit back and shut up, eventually mom goes, it's only your senior year once. As soon as she says that, they're buying the 24x36 medal or whatever they were looking at, because she knows he wants that. He said right off the bat, this is awesome, or this is really cool. Once he says those words, you've sold that product if you just learn to shut up and let them buy it themselves.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that a little bit. For me, I am selling before their session, kind of. So
Okay.
when I meet with them at their styling consultation, I go through all of the products. If they meet with me at my studio, then I'm handing them the products. And we're looking at them that way. Sometimes I go to their home, or we meet virtually for their consultation. And in that case, then we're looking at images in my senior magazine or something like that. But we're talking a lot about, what kinds of things do you imagine having after your session? Like,
Sure.
what do you imagine having in your home? And if they're like, I don't know, then I might be in their house and I'll be like, well, you got this giant wall over here that's got nothing on it. And then I kind of like shame them for not having any portraits on their walls a little bit, in good fun. But anyway, I kind of start that process before we even have the photo shoot. I take note about what products they seem excited about, what their home looks like, what kinds of colors they design their home with. If I'm not in their home, I ask them about that. So I'm kind of taking note on all these things. And then during the session, I can be like, oh my gosh, I got to get a close up of your shoes because that would look really cool in the album, or like whatever. I kind of am, and it's not really a conscious thing for me. It just kind of happens like it's easy for me to remember the conversations that we've had, and I bring it up. Like, oh, I'm going to do this in like a really big wide angle so that if you want to print it for that really cool wall piece, and it's going to look awesome. Like I'll say things like that. And then when they come back after the end of their session, we make the appointment for their in-person sales. So they know exactly how long they're going to wait to see images. And then at that point, I'm like, you really need to be looking through that magazine and really considering who you need to get a portrait for, where you want to put things, what you want to have in your home. And then that way, when they come back for their IPS, I really don't have to sell a whole lot. At that point, we do their slideshow. After the slideshow, immediately after the slideshow, I ask them if they have any questions about products or pricing. And then if they do, we talk about stuff. And then I ask them right there. I'm like, are you thinking about a specific item or a collection? Because the next steps might be determined by what you want in the end. Sometimes it's, I don't know. Sometimes they know exactly what they want. And then I'm just helping them pick out the photos for that. And so it becomes more of a service than it does an order appointment, because I'm helping them select images to go in the products that I know they want. And then at that point is when I'm trying to upsell. So if they're saying like, I know I want a wall piece, I'm thinking the 12 by 18. And I'm like, well, where are you going to put it? You know, and I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be big enough. And then I pull out sizes and we talk about that. So I'm really kind of trying to upsell a little bit at the sales session. I've already kind of sold products to them ahead of time without them really knowing.
Okay. So it really sounds like your sales process, if I can use that term, starts at the consultation, continues to the photo session, because you're kind of photographing for specific products in mind. And then
Yeah,
again,
a little bit.
a little bit, and then again, educating, when it comes to the time of ordering, reminding them of some of this and stuff. Josh, would you say that's kind of
Yeah.
similar for you as well?
No, because I don't do consultations. So again, I'm
Okay.
working with senior guys. They want as little time in front of me as possible.
Makes sense.
And to be honest, I'm kind of the same. So we're uh, anybody that knows me very well knows that I am a much more transactional based person when it comes to how I run my business than I am relationship building, which I know for photographers isn't a popular thing. But hey, there's some of us out there who is just, I'm not the person who goes to the grocery store and likes to chat it up with the cashier. I expect them to do my transaction and me walk out and go home. And so because I know that I'm like that, I know there's other people like that. And I find that we all find each other. So my clients find me because of how I organize my business and everything. And they also want me to be transactional based.
Sure.
And so there's not a whole lot of like beforehand. It's we communicate much more via text or email versus phone calls, because I hate phone calls and my customers tend to hate phone calls. And so we work really well together. So no, for me, it's kind of the opposite, where I have as very few touch points with them as possible. And they love and appreciate that. And I love and appreciate that. And so it just works out really well for both of us.
Well, now I know why you never call me back, Josh. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's awesome. I think something you said earlier, I think is so helpful, because I have a feeling there's a lot of photographers getting started and seasoned photographers that would relate to what you said. They don't consider themselves a salesperson either. And I love how you said that you're a problem solver, because I think that could be one of those things that if somebody's having a hurdle on jumping on board with IPS, because of the idea, I don't want to be a salesperson, the idea of being a problem solver, I think, is so much easier than trying to sell to people. So I think that's just spot on.
When I think for when we get into our own mentality and all that crazy stuff, like semantics is huge. And
Mm-hmm.
the way that we describe ourselves actually affects the way that we live our day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how we see ourselves and how we describe ourselves. So if somebody were to call me a salesman, it would literally depress and affect me to the core, because I wouldn't want to live up to that standard of being a salesman. Now, I know I need to sell products if I want to do this business, but just looking at it from the lens of problem solving, which is something that I love. I love seeing a problem. That's photography, right? We want to create this image and it's kind of in our head, and how we have to solve the problems of lighting and composition and all these things.
Yeah.
And so if I can approach it from a lens and perspective of something I love to do, it makes it a whole lot easier for me to not crumple up in a ball and die every time I need to do IPS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the client's expectation has a lot to do with it too. I I love that you mentioned, or I feel like you're a problem solver. I feel that way. My whole thing is like I try to create a stress-free experience. So
Sure.
everything that I'm doing is stress-free for them and me. So I have encountered a lot of scenarios, doing sales like this and whatnot, and I don't like those uncomfortable feelings. Like I don't like to feel like I'm being pushy. I don't like to be pushed upon as a buyer, like nobody likes a
Mm-hmm.
car salesman type person. So I know I don't like that, kind of along the lines of what Josh was saying. He knows he doesn't like all the touch points. And so I know that that's uncomfortable for me. And I have made my process happen to where like I'm not really having to sell, so to speak. Like I really am just letting them tell me, and then I kind of guide them along the way, and they're giving me their money. And it's all through all the communications I've had with them prior to their session, and even in my marketing, like I just make people really aware that this is going to be an investment. You're going to be expected to purchase,
Sure.
products and whatever. So people just know that before they even agree to hire me.
Yeah.
And it makes the whole thing a lot easier.
Good. We had a question come in. Yes, the keepsake box or proof box, like Josh calls it, is the image box. Available in 3 sizes: 4x6, 5x7, 8x10. It could be image wrapped like Josh does. We do have a Chromolux cover, which can be paired with a material, and then a full material wrap. So that could be linen, leathers. So yeah, it's a great product. You could put double-sided prints in there, proofs, matted prints. It's quite versatile. Well, great. Closing thoughts, you guys. Like, if you could give one piece of advice to somebody that's getting started in offering product, they've never offered product before, what would that be?
Keep it simple.
Yep.
If it's overwhelming in your head, you've overthought it too much.
Okay, good.
So slim those products down. If this is new to you, slim those products down. You're just offering a handful of things, so it's not overwhelming. And then I think most people struggle with pricing.
Mm,
Um, I think the best school of thought for that, for me, is on average, I always say if you're brand new, like this is somebody brand new at this, okay? Mark up your stuff by say like 300% of your cost of goods. So say if it costs you $50, you're going to charge 150 for it. And I'm not trying to dictate prices. I'm just saying the way my brain works is like keep it super simple, right? And so now you don't have a lot of products to offer, and you don't have to do all this math on figuring this marks up here and this marks up here. Now, for your gift prints, right, your 8x12s and smaller, yeah, you'll want to do some custom pricing on those. You don't want to just take a $2 print and charge $6 for it. But you could, and there would be nothing wrong with that. So the other thing is Paul, you mentioned before, there's no one way to do this, and there's no one right way to do this.
mm.
But my best advice is like keep it as dumb simple as possible, so that you're not overstressed trying to present this to a person for the first time.
Good.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. That was my what was going to be my comment, was just make it easy for yourself. And if you're confused by your pricing and however it works, then chances are your customer's going to
Customer
feel
will be.
confused.
Yeah.
And then nobody likes that confusion. So that's a negative thought. So I just always am trying to keep things positive. And if it's easy for me, then it should be easy to sell, like for the client as well. So yeah, that would be my biggest tip, would be to keep it simple and just make it easy for yourself. And a lot of that is educating your client ahead of time.
Good. Yeah, somebody just commented, I love dumb and simple.
Same.
Yeah.
And Jaimy made a good point there when she finished by saying, make sure to educate your client ahead of time. So that's another valid point, is making sure customers know your pricing, know all the expectations and everything up front. And even in a process like mine, where I'm not doing consultations and things, they're still getting all of that information sent to them and being urged to review everything. And that's why I make it on my website. I want somebody to be able to just stumble across me and know what to expect if they contact me.
Sure.
I know there's debates about what you put on a website and whatnot. Again, there's no one right way to do it. This is how I do it because it's dumb and simple.
Yeah.
But making sure that we've all experienced years in the past where we didn't communicate something effectively up front, either be our pricing or what we offer, what we're truly doing, and then it creates downstream problems. I find it's better to put everything up front. If they choose not to use you, it wasn't your client, right? It
Sure.
wasn't your customer.
Yeah.
But be honest, be upfront with everything, present what you're actually offering, and do that upfront so that downstream is much easier.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. I'm so appreciative to both of you for taking the time today. just to answer some questions, chat a little bit, and just share your wisdom from your heads and the businesses that you guys have that you've learned over the years. Just thank you so much for chatting with us today. You both, like I said earlier, are just fabulous photographers, business owners, and thank you. I do also want to plug our next one. The next one that we have coming up in our series will be on September 11th, and we'll have Pam Jones and Nathan Loker, two more of our sponsored photographers that we can pick their brains and learn a little bit about business and how they sell product and what product they like. So anyway, just want to thank you guys again and wish you guys the best. And yeah, any closing remarks? Otherwise, we'll let you get going.
Nope. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, same. Thanks for having me. And you know, again, if you're new to this, don't let fear stop you. Fear is an enemy, and we'll just do it and figure it out as you go. That's
As you go.
the best
That's awesome.
advice.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. We'll close it down now, and thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
You do the same.
Bye.
All right. See you later,
guys.
everyone. See you September 11th.